I am Jackie,
And I'm Seth,
and this is Never TMI,
where we talk about real things.
and nothing is ever off limits.
Nothing.
Never.
Well, what's up, guys? Another episode of the podcast here. We are very grateful to be sitting in front of this camera today and just getting to have another discussion with each other and with you guys.
On a more personal note, I apologize for my sniffing and my voice. I was just so sad thinking about Kennedy going to school. Maybe one day, we have no idea what we're doing in that area, but definitely just had a little emotional breakdown over that.
Maybe one day. Sounds like she will go to school one day, yes. That's
Well,
just
obviously, we're taught like homeschooling, all of it. We just
Yeah.
are so, we have no idea yet. So it's just the thought of like, oh my gosh, time. How is she 3?
Yeah.
But anyway, today I'm very excited. I'm actually really excited about today's topic or topics. We're going to be talking about just like, I would say honestly, again, because we're not like, we're by no means professionals or teachers here. We wanted to talk about kind of our experience with our differences, but also like things that have helped us navigate, or just like perspective when it comes to navigating different things. So differences in any relationship, but specifically and especially like a marriage relationship or, you know, a serious relationship that you might be in, but like to break them down, we've got personality, finances, parenting, spiritual, so like theology potentially, or just different spiritual beliefs, and then politics. We won't be like, you know, touching on like our personal opinions by any means, unless they come up. But yeah, just more so how to deal with it. Like Seth and I could not be more opposite in every single way. So it takes a lot of work, especially when we are different and have very different, like all these categories, we just are almost the opposite in. Similar like moral beliefs, but a lot of different opinions, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I think this topic kind of came about. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of, the 5 love languages, or I just recently read a book called The 7 Different Money Types, and that kind of provoked this thought again, in a different avenue. And it's kind of this concept of, embracing your differences, like, as husband and wife, we are one flesh, we're together, we're a unified group, a unified front, but we are, like Jackie said, we are so different and complete opposites in a lot of different things. And I think at first it was always hard because it's like, and I think even growing up, it's like you just become accustomed to this is how I do things, and I think it's right because this is how I've always done it, or this is like I feel so passionately that I'm right in doing this way, and I have a reason for doing it. At least I do sometimes, and I know I can come across like my way is the right way and your way isn't. And it took a lot of, work in the relationship and even time to realize that my way isn't always the right way, and there isn't necessarily one right way to do things. And that was just my short-mindedness. And being married to Jackie, and just over the years, I've been able to see Jackie do things in a different way that I would never choose to do them. But then I see that the same result, comes about. So getting to the same result a different way, and that's really opened my eyes just to kind of this topic of embracing her differences, and like our differences really make us stronger. And I know people say opposites attract when it comes to relationships. I know some people who would die on the hill that you would want to be like-minded and similar. They'd rather be, have a partner who's similar. And I think for us, we've definitely seen the benefits of being opposite
Mm-hmm.
because, where I have, weakness in certain areas, that might be Jackie's
Mm-hmm.
strength, excuse me, and vice versa. And so I feel like we do a good job of just kind of balancing each other out. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of, uh, you know, I guess why we're having this conversation today. So,
Yeah.
all right, you want to hit the
Yeah,
first topic,
sure.
personality.
Yeah, personality is a big one for us because I mean, could not be more opposite. Like, just personality wise, I'm definitely more outgoing, spontaneous, louder, a little crazier, less like type A, like I always say I'm like type Z. I just very free, very um
Is
we'll
that a
get to it
thing?
later. I don't think
Type
so.
C. Oh, that's
No,
just your. I was like,
I've just always said because I'm
never
like,
heard of that.
no, not type B or C. Like we're way down the line. Um, that's just my personality, just way more like time management is just not a thing. Like it's not a strength, I should say. Organization, not a strength. Cleanliness, really working on it. Um,
You're carefree. You've got a carefree
very
spirit.
carefree and just very like people over anything else. So I'm very relational and
Hmm.
whatever. Seth,
Very artistic,
yeah,
expressive.
creative. I went to school
Like,
for photography. Like that's just I never, I mean literally never cared. I would be I would like go to school like in high school or something and literally the teacher would be like, okay, just pull out your homework. And when people would pull it out, like I just saw all these different types of personalities and they still pulled out their homework. And I was like, wait, like he did his homework? Like that's shocking. He did his homework? She did her homework? I was like the only one that didn't do it and could not have cared less. And so it was just shocking because I was like, is there something off with like why don't I care at all? But like they seem more carefree, but they still did their homework. Like I must be really bad. Um, so yeah, I think I'm just like carefree, but just on the way end of the spectrum, if you will. And then Seth is everything I said in the complete opposite direction. So like I would say you're very like you have a side. You've got your fun, crazy side that not many people get to see, but um, that is coming out a little bit more and more. But very type A, the most organized person I know. I will never forget going in his room. I was like snooping in his room when he was in college, or you weren't even in college.
no, I was.
You were, okay. And literally, he had like a few roommates, and I was over his house. Um, and I went into his room and I like looked through his drawers and everything, which is so invasive, but it is what it is. I was so nervous because I was like, if I move anything, this man is gonna know. Like everything had a spot. His bed was militant. It literally was militant. Like his shoes, it was spotless. His pens were organized. It was like his books, his notebooks. I was like, I've never seen this in my entire life, especially coming from a man. And so he is just a little less flexible. Like you're very structured. You're gonna
Hmm.
be on time. You're incredibly reliable. Your memory is selective when it when it comes to me. Anything having to do with our relationship, not so great. But like if he's got to do something, if we have an appointment, he is the appointment guy. He's the finances guy. So we're very, 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 very different. And I think for a long time, like personality wise, like I, I, I don't know how we made it as far as we did without like being like, oh my gosh. But I feel like we have had to learn big time how to appreciate our differences rather than seeing them as like a negative thing. And I saw this thing the other day actually. Um, when it comes to someone who's like more spontaneous, like the things that make me the way that I am come with like the benefits of who I am as well. And same with Seth. So like for instance,
Mm,
Seth
that's good.
being you know, a type A and a little inflexible or, you know, um a little bit more serious, like that kind of stuff, or him being on time or like those things that I might see as like frustrating or difficult. It's like, can you just like leave the dishes and come over here and just chill out for a second? Or like, um, can you just like, I don't know, whatever. Those the opposite to that, or those very things are the things that like I don't know, make him who he is. Though the very things I loved about him, the fact that he was very like he stood out from other men because I was like, man, he really has his stuff together. His maturity, his reliability. Like I can rely on him and I can trust him more than anything. And I'm not sure that would be the case if like it weren't for those qualities. Now, am I the most reliable person? Not really, but like my other things that you might see like, man, why are you not on time? Why couldn't you care less about this or whatever? It's like, translate into me putting people over things and maybe caring about the relationship with people or how people might be or um
Well, yeah, and that's, I guess, we should dive into that. Like, what are the benefits that you see in the differences? And I know you've kind of
in you
touched
and
on it.
I.
Yeah, and so, with the light of embracing those things,
Mhm.
like knowing who you are and who I am, like I really have enjoyed, and I feel like I've become a better balanced person
Mhm.
when it comes to prioritizing, little details that, I used to like being late used to be a huge pet peeve of mine. And not that I'm pro being late, but I feel like you've helped me to give, like your personality has really helped me to give grace to people who are late
Mm.
and be gracious to even myself if I run late because Lord knows I'm not perfect by any means. So whenever I do something that I would expect myself to do or others to do, it's like I feel like from being with you and learning from you and um, kind of like taking on some of your attributes as well.
Mhm.
I think that's something that I can really. That's one that sticks out to me. Just first, it's just like
Mhm.
your carefree spirit of just you know everything doesn't have to be such a big deal. And I think that's
Mhm.
a downside of my personality is like, oh, the littlest thing can set me off, or
Mhm.
like I make things a bigger deal than maybe what they should be. And Jackie's personality has really taught me that no, like it's okay if you make mistakes. And and again, my dad always used to say balance is the key to life, and the
Mhm.
older that I get, the more I see the truth in that. And
I mean, yeah, there's a time for everything. So like of
right.
course, I would say one thing with you would be your again like the time management and the organization. Like you've absolutely helped me to be a better steward of my things and of my spaces and like I just a little bit more like responsible too. Like I would definitely classify myself, or I used to be someone that was very irresponsible, not dependable, not reliable. Um, and I never, the other thing is I didn't really see it like, and maybe it was my pride, but I was like, that's fine. That's just my personality. That's who I am. And I think there's an issue with anyone who's unwilling to change, who's unwilling to like grow in certain areas because I absolutely like I know the things that I struggle with, but it's like it's not necessarily going to benefit anyone. It's not okay for me to just label myself as irresponsible or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always late. Like I I don't want that to be my identity. Maybe it's going to be something that I'm might struggle with for the rest of time, who knows, but like that's it doesn't mean it's something I can't get better at. So like I used to think Seth was like crazy for not being able to like leave the dishes and just have like a spontaneous like sweet moment or like um I don't know, trying something new, doing something different, out of the ordinary, whatever. Um or just when it comes to like being a good steward, using a coaster. Like I never ever used to use a coaster until I met Seth, and then I still didn't use a coaster, and then we got married, and it was like I need to use a coaster, because I have no choice. But that now I'm like, oh, I see why this is like a respectful thing to do in other people's homes and in my home. And now I notice, and I'm so not that person. Like I couldn't care less if someone like broke our coffee table. I couldn't care less. But I'm like, oh, I notice that they're not using a coaster. And that's something that I appreciate about myself now is that I can care about something like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
even though my personality is like, I'm not using a coaster because I don't care. It's because it's just not in my wheelhouse. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not. But sometimes my personality, certain things that I might not be thinking about, can come across poorly to other people.
Right.
So I think you've helped me. That's something that has really helped me to like really think about on another level. Think about like the way, I remember when you were working on my parents' bathroom, like at Turnbridge, the way that he would like clean up the space afterwards. I literally was like, "You're coming back here in like a solid 8 hours. Like you're gonna be back in the space and you're gonna mess it all up again." And of course, I'm sure a lot of that is just literally his personality. So it would have been fine if he left it the way it was. But it's like, you never know. Like, are our parents going to walk up there and maybe have to use the restroom and it's a mess and you're, ruining your shoes on scraps and bits and pieces on the bathroom floor. Or it's just, whatever. You just never know. And so I think it's just made me more aware of like how to leave things better than I found them. And all that kind of stuff. So that's definitely another
Mm-hmm.
personality thing I think of yours that I used to see as a big negative or like just frustrating or overbearing that now it's like, oh, our household would absolutely crumble if you were not that way and it would be a mess and it would probably be chaos for the kids and so yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing too about your personality, and you mentioned it, is like spontaneity. Like I would not be spontaneous at all if it wasn't for Jackie. Just given
Mm,
my personality, but she's really added a lot of fun to my life just because of um, that attribute of things don't need to be perfect. We can drop everything or leave it and come back to it like,
mm,
and even with the heart of just like emotionally of putting people first and feeling more for people, like your feelings and understanding your feelings has really helped me to feel more.
mm.
And I think that's also helped me to be more empathetic towards others. Um,
And you're such like yeah, you've I
and
don't know, you sorry, go ahead. Go
well,
ahead.
no, I'm just saying like more from, a relational standpoint of like, and we kind of joke about this, but through our marriage counseling, they introduced to us like a feelings wheel.
Mhm.
And so it's this wheel with multiple layers of all these different types of feelings.
Like a bajillion different feelings that you've never even.
I mean, there's probably at least like 60 words of different feelings that you might have.
There's an example of our personality differences. Like a bajillion. You're like, there's 62. But anyway, go ahead.
But like looking at the wheel, it's like if I was to sit and think about this, or if you asked me the question off the top of my head, I might be able to list like five of these that
Mhm.
would come to my mind. And
Mhm.
so just like being exposed to like even new vocabulary of how to express your emotions
Yeah.
and just like, but through Jackie, like with her intentionality of people over things, like you hear her talking about someone could break the coffee table. To me, it's like if you break the coffee table, we're gonna have some issues. But like learning to then, kind of goes back to what I started saying. It's like things aren't always a big deal. And so I guess that I know we're talking a lot about our personal differences in personality, but the point is that like we've learned to embrace the other person
Mm-hmm.
and even take on some of their attributes, and I feel like that's really helped us become
Become better
better
rounded.
individuals. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
so much more better rounded than we used to be, and so from a personality standpoint, we would definitely challenge you guys, you and your
Yeah.
spouse or your partner to, I don't know, even as a like on a date night or something, to sit and talk about it, or because
Yeah.
again, this is a real conversation for us in real time. Like,
Totally.
we thought of these topics, but we haven't actually talked about like these differences. So
No.
it's
And
fun to bounce these off.
it is. I mean, literally before this podcast, we're literally having two different opinions on school, on what
Hmm.
it's like it happens all the time. And the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next one is just don't be afraid to like challenge your partner too. They might not always see it the way that you see it. Like I remember um we were, and even for Seth to tell me sometimes, like to explain it to me is better. It's like why do I have to, like I don't care. We're walking inside and I'm leaving my coffee cups and my water cup and my coat and my purse and everything in the car. It's like for him to like take the time to not just get upset with me, but to be like, okay, let's bring this in, or like to go the extra mile. That's something I really appreciate about you. You go the extra mile even when I think it's so unnecessary. Sometimes I'm like, who freaking cares? But like it's sometimes you gotta admit sometimes it's unnecessary. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just appreciate the habit of him going the extra mile and being like we don't need to just like do one fat deep clean once a month in our car or in our room. Like let's just be better, whatever. Okay. But anyway, oh, what was I gonna say about
Let's just be better.
my personal example? Oh, when my sister would come and like be in our room and like use our bathroom or something, like she'd be like getting ready and like Seth would come in with this look of like he's inconvenienced. Like, why is someone else in our bathroom in a home that we weren't even paying for? It was just like, so obviously in that situation, I'm like, oh, you're dead wrong. Like, this is not okay. This isn't just personality difference. Like, this is something that you need to work on because, like, we can't act like this. For me, that's not an issue at all. I'm like, I don't care if our entire family needs to come and sleep on this bed tonight. We can sleep on the ground. Like, that's my natural bend. That is not his natural bend. And he has other natural bends that I clearly don't. But, like, I'll never forget. There was one time and I got so mad because it had happened like a couple times. And I was like, I cannot stand you. I can't stand this. Like, you're making other people feel, and I could have said it in a more like loving way, obviously. So my point here is do it in a loving way, but don't be afraid to give them like to encourage them to think differently and to change their perspective. He has become such a like you've gotten so much more generous. You're such a better friend. Like
Hmm.
just over time, um just saying like look, you're probably making them feel uncomfortable, like as much as you feel like you have like your own little attitude in your head, like it's coming out and it's translating. Do you want to be that kind of person that people have to tiptoe around? Do you want to, you say you want to have this open door policy and anyone's welcome in your home, but like no one's going to want to come to your home if you're acting like this. So like don't be afraid to challenge them as well, and I think both of us do that for each other.
Hmm.
And over the past 5 years, we've seen just a big difference in like each other.
No, that's a great point.
Thanks.
Um, okay. Next
Moving
topic
on.
is finances.
Mm.
All right, so I would say to sum it up, I'm, again, type A meticulous. I like our finances to be
Hmm.
logical. It's math, so math always has to add up.
Yep.
And knowing what's going in or what's coming in, what's going out, like having a plan for our finances and sticking, I guess, a budget. Those are some of my preferences and strengths.
Mhm.
Jackie, on the other hand, with her personality, she can be so much more carefree with her finances. She can live life without a budget and still somehow make ends meet.
My philosophy is
And
that it'll come from somewhere. It'll show up.
and she, I think a positive to that mindset though is she is probably the most generous person that I know.
Mm.
And so like, when it comes to people, again, she puts people over things, over herself, even to a fault. Um, but if it comes to like someone needs something, or I feel like this would really make this person's day if we did this. Like Jackie has such a generous mindset that was really contagious, for me, and it's become something that I think we both really enjoy, and like we enjoy being able to be generous. We enjoy
Mhm.
being able to give, even if it is to a fault or isn't, benefiting us, and
Mhm.
really, I guess, hurting us,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
a financial standpoint. Um, but that was a big eye opener for me of just like, you know, a budget has to make sense. It's math. It has to add up.
Mm.
And, I think in doing that, I kind of take out all the other emotional elements of finances that come with it, and even spiritual, trusting that
Mhm.
God's going to provide for us,
Mhm.
even if we choose to bless someone or help someone in need.
Mhm.
And so Jackie has really helped soften my heart to, I think, be more open to those things. And it's been fun. Like, I enjoy that. I enjoy living a life where I'm not a Scrooge and, you know,
Stingy and all that kind of stuff.
right. And I think it even goes back again to the person that I'm becoming through that.
Mhm.
I enjoy myself and appreciate and like that person better than who I was of
Mm.
just, a miser and um,
Yeah.
like
Penny
constantly
pinching.
penny pinching, but then even constantly worrying about money or thinking about money, or and that
Mhm.
even goes into mindset of like comparing yourself. How much do I have and how much do they have? Like,
Mhm.
and so that's something that I've really appreciated
Mm.
from a financial standpoint.
Thank you. I mean, I will just say I definitely have I have put us in poor positions because of my um and when it comes to generosity, like I think we both agree. I've seen him like literally transform as a person when it comes to his generosity, which has been really a beautiful thing because it's something I'm very passionate about and something now he is like extremely passionate about as well. We would always, always, always rather give than receive, and it's just I'm thankful for that. I think outside of generosity, like just poor, decisions on my end or poor like even requests. Like he doesn't want to just tell me no all day long, but I've put us in like I can see how my money management or lack thereof approach definitely can be like a detriment without him. So there's absolutely times where I'm like, for instance, I wanted to like I wanted to buy a camera and like my dream lens or camera or whatever it was. And I was just like, I will like work on the side. I will do like whatever I need to do to get it. Like, let me build things and sell them. Let me, make this, do that. Like, I will find a way. I will sell a million things. And he's like, Jackie, that's not how, like, that's not how life works. That's not, you're married now. You have a family. Like, you can't just like make your own side income for the things that you want. Like, it doesn't work like that. So I feel like I am obviously a little bit more of like a creative thinker, but that doesn't always translate to like healthy money management. It's like, yeah, let me buy this with the money that we don't have, and then let me make it, and then we'll be fine. But it's like there's a lot of gaps in there. Like we have bills, we have this and that. So I feel like you've definitely, as often as we disagree, I think we also know that each other, you know, I think it does come down to just like Like, I'm never gonna look at the way he looks at finances, even if I disagree with a certain decision or something. I can appreciate what comes with that. Like, I can never look at it and just be like, you're horrible. This is terrible. Like, it's overbearing. It's frustrating. Like, you're just the worst. It's all wrong. It's like, no. The way he approaches things is not wrong, and the way I approach things is not wrong. We could just literally, that is the beauty and the point of like
Hmm.
coming together and taking bits and pieces from who he is and his personality and his money management and his whatever. Like, I might not need all of it because we don't need two of the same person, but like, I don't want him to think completely the way that I think, and he shouldn't want me to think the way that he thinks completely. But like, we can use each other 100%. So if you have that mindset of like, I might not agree 100% with all that you do, but like, you can absolutely learn from each other and work with each other instead of being like each other's enemy and being like, you don't care about our finances. That was like a big thing, I think, because we looked at it differently. Seth would be like, there's no way you care. And it was like, I felt like I had to prove, like, no, I do care. I just am, it's not like number one on my list, it's number five, where it might be number one for him. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be my number one. Um, so I think just having that mindset and perspective of like, we're not trying to make each other force each other into like a whole new mindset. We just are trying to take bits and pieces, learn from each other, maybe correct each other in love every now and then where necessary. But I think it's been really helpful and very freeing to just like take bits and pieces from each other.
Hmm.
Um,
And yeah, with relationships, it's a compromise, and so
yeah.
it's learning how to work together.
Mhm.
And like, with finances, like when I sit down to budget, like I consider Jackie's perspective now, and that's reflected in what we do with our money. So it's like we'll sit down and have conversations of, okay, what's important? What do you think we should do with this? And those, it's not like I'm just off doing this by myself
Mhm.
my own way. Like, it requires intentionality of kind of just slowing the pace down a little bit to
Mhm.
learn the rhythm of your partner, and even inviting them into those spaces. And again, the fruit that we've seen from it is, I I think we just a more joyful life. Like
Mhm.
it's proven to bear good fruit for us, even though it's not how we would normally do it by ourselves, or you know the way that we thought we would do it and stuff like that. Like it's ended up being a good thing for us, and I think we're better for it. So.
Yeah, and I have to consider and respect you in it. Like, I can't just go and do what I want to do. It's like there's certain things that I absolutely want or could ask for, or look, these flights to Mexico are so cheap. Like, we could make this work. Even if we could make it work, it's like, I know, even though I'm so not stressed about our finances, which I can be, but if I weren't whatsoever, like, I still have to consider and also respect the fact that I'm not on my own. Like, I am one with a whole other human being who is stressed about this, who, you know, like, I'll never forget him telling me, like, you coming to me with all the, I don't care if it's in 2027, all these trips that you have like in your brain at all times. I think once a week I look for like a new vacation. Like, I'm ready to go at all times, but he's like, that stresses me out. And it's like, okay, so now I can dream on my own and 90% of those trips don't happen, but that's fine. Like, you just have to know each other and love each other enough to like consider each other, just like you said. But anyway, next topic.
Next topic is parenting.
Parenting. Okay. I'd say I'd say out of all these topics, the only thing that we might differ on the most would be discipline, and I think it's a pretty common thing. Um,
Mhm.
I think I'm definitely more.
What a deep topic. We'll probably have to do an episode
I
on
know we
discipline.
should, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of people are curious on like, I don't know, a lot of people maybe like three, who knows, but Um, I'm always interested and curious in how like people parent and just their opinions and views and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to us, like I'm probably more open to like what is there's no right or wrong thing. There is absolutely right or wrong thing. But like there's so many right ways to do it. There's so many good ways to parent. And I'm like not tied to just one because I'm like, okay, I see this girl who turned out I'm going to use someone as an example, which is funny. Um, hopefully, I'm sure it'll be fine. Maddie Nelson, like one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. Okay. Such a sweetheart, just a wonderful person, beautiful heart. And her mom, Allie, who is like, literally might as well be Allie from the Notebook, like just precious, sweet, amazing. And I'm like, there is no way that Allie, like, was this like aggressive and it was funny because I literally read something today that she was answering a question on her Instagram and was like, there was never really a point that like Maddie didn't like, so I'm sure you guys have all seen it, but like there was never a point that Maddie didn't like me or we went through like a really rough patch. It was just like we had a great relationship. And I'm like, she's like, I don't even know what I did to do that. So in my mind, I'm like, that happened. Like that happened. And like, she turned out wonderful. So like, but then there's like other people who turn out wonderful or watching like a Shaq documentary and like his parents were so strict and so this and so that. And I'm like, he turned out wonderful. So I'm just like so open and curious. And I think you are more like, which again goes into our personalities, just like we're going to choose one and we're going to go that straight and narrow and just a little bit less like explorative and curious. You're like, no, we're going to be consistent and stick to something, which I'm sure is good for them. But I have a harder time because I'm like, what if we're doing this all wrong? What if this isn't the right one? What if this is a bad one? So I think that's kind of where we differ just when it comes to like parenting.
Yeah.
You know? Or do you agree?
I think too, when it comes to especially discipline, like I am probably more, definitely more strict.
Mm-hmm.
When
like you're the disciplinarian, kind of.
And not that not that I'm only the disciplinarian.
No, you're also the fun one. So there's that.
But it's not that I'm saying it's not that you don't discipline.
Yes.
But I will definitely be the first to, not tolerate something. Mm-hmm. Like if Kennedy's acting goofy, at the dinner table, it's like I'm probably going to be the one that says something first because it's like it probably is going to irritate or bother me first. And so it's just like, having that role, like I am more strict, like
we don't mess around at the dinner table where I'm
right,
like,
I need you to hear me the first time and not do it again kind of thing. And if not, there's consequences where I think Jackie can be definitely more, again, carefree with that. And not that she's irresponsible with it by any means, but it's just like her tolerance to these things. And I'm sure, even part of that's just your upbringing. It's like
totally
growing up with 7 kids running around. Like I'm sure that would be crazy. And so you just have a less tolerance to some of these, if a kid's yelling or whatever. And so, but it's like if I get to a point where it's like, okay, Kennedy, now there's a consequence to your actions. And whatever that point is of a consequence, Jackie's always good to remind me of like, okay, no, like remove your frustration from it, remove your feelings from it, and like come at it. Like even discipline can be done in love, as I think it absolutely should be all the time.
Needs to be, yeah.
But it's not to say that like people don't discipline out of, people will discipline out of anger. I know that, and I've done it before. And so Jackie's personality when it comes to parenting and especially discipline is she's more gracious, she's more patient, and by her expressing that to me, like she like I really appreciate when she's around, and obviously there's ways
I
to
was about
go
to say, I
about
don't always
delivering
do
these
it in the
things.
best way, which I'm working on because I
Time,
can be like a little naggy and controlling too. But
the way the message is
yeah,
delivered and the time at which it's delivered, I think is critical and very important.
yeah,
But I do really appreciate a different perspective, or a perspective that says, hey, like, you know, it's not that big a deal.
yeah.
Like, let your discipline speak for itself, and not you getting angry and trying
Mm-hmm.
to be some scary person to like intimidate.
Mm-hmm.
And so really helping me remove some of the negative emotions because of her character and personality, that I think is the thing that sticks out to me the most.
I think too, like I don't want to be, which I can see sometimes because I can be like extra gracious. And I think I always just remember my mom and how she was just so not unfazed, but she just was like, it's not that serious. You know, like if nothing was like
Hmm.
the hill to die on. My dad was definitely more the disciplinarian. And like, I don't know, it was just, we were able to like have fun and all that kind of stuff. Now, there was definitely order. And I think she even, I mean, she did a way better job than me. And I can't imagine with 7 kids. So, like, I mean, she just did everything perfectly, in my opinion. But um, there was probably, I don't know, like, there's moments where I'm like, oh, I don't even know what to do with this. Like, I kind of won't do anything, or I'll like say something, but I'm like, she's not even getting it. So I do feel like in certain moments where you might be more like, okay, we need to do something about this. And like you can be right in that, but either me out of either like, remorse or like, oh, but she's not like, I can like make excuses and that affect her in a not positive way. And I don't want to be those parents with the kids that are just off the wall who aren't disciplined. So it is hard to find that line. Um,
And so much of it too, I think, really does depend on the kid or your child
Totally.
in this case. Like, it's not just between Jackie and I and our
No.
personalities. Like, parenting is such a deep
Mm-hmm.
topic, and there's so much that goes into it. And I think, like what you said, we know people who, you know, it was just tough love all the way growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and they've turned out to be wonderful people. But also people who've been given all the freedom under the sun to do, or to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
do whatever they want to do, and they also turn out wonderful people. And it's
Totally.
just like,
People who
there's
weren't disciplined whatsoever, and they're
right,
like,
and they
great.
were given so much freedom as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and but then today you meet them, and there's some like your favorite people to talk to. It's just like, how did
Yeah.
you turn out like this?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it really does depend on the personality of
Totally.
the child. And again, it's just to say that there's not a right way to do things. There's
Or there
not
might
there's
be
not
many
one
right
right
ways.
way. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
And so
I
again,
think it, I
oh,
think, sorry,
no, you're
sorry.
good.
I think it comes down to respect too. Like Seth and I can
Hmm.
have different opinions and approaches on like discipline, or in a certain moment where he's like, no, she's getting in trouble, and I'm like, I don't think she should get in trouble for this, or like, think about this, or like, maybe you're frustrating her, and like, look at how you're handling this. You're probably making her more angry, or she's probably wanting, like, kids are kids and they're manipulative and all that kind of stuff. But I think it comes down to like, no matter what, I am going to be dead wrong, and I am often, by the way that I approach Seth in those moments. Um, if I don't check myself, it's like my way isn't right either. Like because there are so many right, good, positive ways to parent, I can't approach parenting as if my way is the best way, because I can be wrong. And so to come at him all the time, which is like literally in this season right now, is probably one of the biggest things I'm working on, is not literally being a nag, because I find that I can be, and it's so annoying to me because I hate when other people are like this, but I can just point out things like, and I think one of my strengths on the strength finder test is like developer. So it's like, I'm like, this can be better. You're not perfect. if someone can be almost perfect, I'm like, no, I'm gonna get you there. Like, forget all of the good stuff, but like this needs to be worked on. When he's like the literal best dad, like he is an incredible dad, but here I am focusing on like the negatives or getting so worked up about whatever and not looking at the big picture. So I think just respecting him enough to and humbling myself enough and like putting my pride down to say I can be wrong. Like I can or not even be wrong. Let him parent the way that he believes is the best way to parent. And even if he is wrong, come to him later. Talk about it later. Debrief about it later. Ask him if he felt like that was okay or not. Like I don't need to control every single moment because then I'm taking away then they're seeing that and Kennedy's especially at her age, she's 3, is able to see like, oh, mom's really in control because she is controlling dad. Like she is in charge. It's like, no, we don't want any of that. So it's like, look, mommy and daddy are a united front, whether that be the case behind closed doors, who cares? But like in front of them, knowing like whatever mommy says is whatever mommy says and whatever daddy says, whatever daddy says. And we can figure it out on our own later outside the moment. So that's definitely something I need to get better in. But yeah.
And I think too, just as kind of like a disclosure, I think it was in the movie King Richard, the quote of "If you don't have a plan, you plan to fail" was a.
If you plan to or you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah. And so just like what Jackie's saying too about like, I think each of us has a conviction of something to do something in some type of way.
Totally.
Like whether it's parenting, like I feel a conviction to discipline my child and whatever that looks like. Like I think I start with like, this is who I am. This is how I feel like I should do it. And then being open to input or advice from your spouse and your partner, that's where it's like you then begin to fine tune or to, consider and gain understanding of that initial feeling. And I say that, I guess, to say, like, I think it's better to have a plan and execute a plan than it is to just not have a plan for finances totally. Or like, I am the way that I am and like, that's it. And it's just going to be what it's going to be. Like definitely, approaching things with a plan, whatever that plan is, I think is your best starting point.
With open arms,
yes, but then taking the way that you do things and holding that with open hands to say, okay, like, can I do this better? Being husband, teachable. Wife, do you have advice for me? Like, what do you think about it? And really just using your partner as a sounding board and then, learning kind of the rhythms of how you guys can work together. I think that is where relationships will really grow stronger and begin to, I think you will really start to thrive and see that in your relationship. And that's, we're just speaking from our own experience, but that really is, I guess, the heart of this whole message is why we're talking through our personal lives in these topics, to challenge you to do the same and to see that. And if you haven't, then having those conversations.
Yeah.
So.
And also knowing even if your spouse is dead wrong, there's still a reason why they're thinking the way that they're thinking. So like, don't be like, you're crazy. Like, I can't believe you. How, like, don't judge your spouse or like run them into the ground emotionally, because even if there's absolutely times where I've known, and I'm 100% sure there's times he's known, like, you are literally dead wrong. This is not the way to think about this. This is not a healthy mindset towards this. But knowing, like, and maybe going back to like, okay, does it have to do with the way you were raised? Does it have to do with like something you heard or read in a book one time? Or just like, there's a reason that we are the way that we are. There's background and roots to that. So like, there is a way to work with each other, and you just have to work towards that. You have to figure that out. So even if the other person is completely wrong and their mindset is so off and so terrible, Like there's reasons for that too. So try to work through that even instead of just like writing it off. Cause it's like, no, we can't work together because you're wrong. It's like, okay, well, before we try to work together in this, let's try to work on your mindset and even see why you are this way or where this is all coming from, and try to,
and not even work on it to change it. Work like
totally,
just to understand
it.
Why do you think
Yeah.
the way that you do?
Mm-hmm.
All right, next topic is spiritual, or I guess more theology of
Yeah.
whatever you believe.
Yeah. I mean,
go?
yeah, I think for this comes down to anything. Like, I feel like, at least for you and I, we've kind of been on a journey together. Like, I feel like when we lived in California, we probably had a little bit more differences that we were working through. That was really hard and frustrating because this one gets down to like who you are as a person and like your core. So it can be tough when you think one way or believe one thing and it's like the thing you're basing your life off of and the other person like doesn't see it that way. So
well, not just down to who you are, but also your life experience. Because I know,
totally,
like your theology
mm-hmm.
is based on a lot of your upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
like what your parents believed and what you were surrounded by, and how did that play out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that's shaped a lot of what you think and why you think that.
People you've listened to, things that like for us when we were in California, a lot of like we weren't, before we got married, we weren't living in the same place. So like I was going to a church and he was going to a church. Those two churches had completely different theologies. They're preaching completely different things. So when we
I wouldn't say completely different theologies. They were just different
approaches. So yes, they were both like non-denominational churches and they were preaching from the word, but obviously you can have very different
interpretations of the word.
Totally different contexts. And so when we got married, I think, you were on one end of things and I was on the other. And that I think at the end of the day, whatever you believe and what, if your spouse or the person you're in a relationship with, or even if you're not really, even when it comes to like a friend or a parent or something like that, not like, it took a lot of grace on both of our parts and patience to like give each other the freedom and the space to like work some things out on your own. So I know there were things for you that took time for you to be like, okay, like maybe this isn't the way, or like, for example, or do you mind if I share an example?
No, I don't.
Never
TMI, baby.
I know. For example, like, something that I think we were both not even raised in, like, but there was like a chunk of our life that where like the prosperity gospel is really a big, and if you are into that and if you believe that, that's fine. I think for us, at least the way that we were, like the season that we were kind of in, where I was a little like, oh, this is kind of difficult. Like Seth would be like, okay, we didn't have $1 million, but we were looking at $1 million homes. He was like, just kind of like putting his faith towards things that I was like, I don't know, like if we're going to win this truck, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's like God's will for our life is to win this truck. Like in my mind, I was like, why would he choose you? Like, no offense, but like, why are you out of all these, that like, what if somebody else could use it more than you? Like, there were just things where I was like, and that I would say the housing thing was something that affected our marriage. Cause I was just like, in his mind, he's like, well, you don't have enough faith. And in my mind, I was like, I felt inferior because I was like, is it my faith? And I was struggling. So like that definitely crept into our marriage, and it was just like, I'm not with you on this. Like, I can't look at these $1 million homes. Like, I would love them. Yes. But like, I can't stand with you firm and believe for these homes. Cause like, I'm not there. And that took him time to lots of like prayer and time, and just not me bombarding him with like my opinions of things and my perspective, but like allowing the Lord to work through him. And honestly, like taking the speck out of my own eye and realizing that I had my own massive issues over here and issues with the way that I believe for things, and the just my approach and understanding of like who God is. And this is, I mean, we're Christians and believers, whatever, so this is just what we believe. But yeah, I had my own issues. So like for me, it would have been foolish for me to just look at him and be like, which I could absolutely do at times, be like, you're just dead wrong. Like this is not right. And I would get so frustrated, but it was just like, that's him, because I'm so wrong in my thinking in certain areas too. So I think that this topic takes just a ton of grace and a lot of like, you know, and even understanding, like having conversations of like, why do you think that? And I think those situations went so much further and were so much more productive when it was just like, why do you believe this? Like what? And don't you think this, or don't you think that? Or like we were talking the other day in the car, maybe like months ago, about like, don't spare the rod. That's like, you know, a verse in the Bible talking a lot of people today, like modern day, relate it to like disciplining your child or like spanking your child. And, you know, for me, I'm like questioning and working through this. And I so appreciated Seth not taking a side or being like, no, it does mean this or it doesn't mean this. It was just like, oh, I think this. And like, why do you think that? Or let's look at like other verses. Like he gave me the freedom to work it out in my mind. And I still, it's like, okay, I put a pin in it and I haven't really thought about it since. But like that was so much more productive. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure like it's all something that we're like working through, like our spirituality and things we believe in, our theology. I know the rug has been ripped under us so many times just in life and in our walk with the Lord. And so just approaching it with grace and understanding and patience for each other to work it out.
No,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And I think from a principle standpoint, those are probably the two things related to this topic that kind of you can apply to all aspects. But I think definitely like you're saying, from a spiritual standpoint, we essentially gave each other the space, or we learned to give each other the space to like figure things out on their own. And then like you can't make your spouse or your partner think one thing or another. Like that's something that they eventually have to come to.
Yeah.
You know. And so there are going to be times where you believe one thing and they believe the other, and you might not ever come to an agreement. But again, learning to understand and, you know, at least understand. And I think a lot of times there's appreciation that can come with that, or just
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like that just makes more sense. Like how you explain that, it's like
Totally.
and I think from this topic, you know, giving them the space to figure things out on their own, and that requires a lot of patience. You know, really just, you know, changes or learning to work well with one another isn't something that happens overnight. It happens through having hard conversations. It happens through, you know, challenging each other. Why do you think that? Wrestling with it. And, you know, those I think again are why learning to embrace these differences makes you so much stronger.
Yeah.
And really I think benefits a relationship is because you're putting in that work of learning the other person, learning why they are the way that they are, and then, you know, potentially adapting, you know, to those nuances, or you know, learning to use them to your benefit.
Yeah.
So,
And last thing before we move on to the last one, I feel like you live so much more free when you like let go of the need to control what the other person believes. Like when I could
Mhm.
finally just be like, he believes what he believes right now, whether I agree with it or not, whether it's right or wrong, that's where he's at. So like I can, like you just said, like having conversations and little moments here and there where I'm like, oh, I'm going to challenge that, or like I'm going to challenge you to think a different way. I was so much less angry with him. I was so much less judgmental. I was so much less fearful. I'm like, what if he thinks this way for the rest of his life? Like, this is terrible. Um, and I was just able to accept him and love him and help him work through these beliefs and things that he was like really passionate about or whatever. Like the things that he believed, like I was able to be like an asset and a safe place for him instead of like, well, he's not even going to talk to me about this anymore, or these are topics that we can't even, they're not even safe topics to discuss because he just knows I'm going to blow up or disagree with him or make him feel dumb or something, and vice versa. Like when he stopped like just challenging, like I've been very open about like just where I'm at with the Lord, and I feel like it's just like a steady growth of like reframing my mindset and finding out who he is instead of just like, yep, listening to people and then taking that belief as my own. Like really diving into the word for myself, but even wanting a desire, like I don't even have a desire right now, this desire in my heart. That's for a different day. But like when he stopped like forcing things on me or like judging me for it, that just changed everything. Like and I feel so much more supported and encouraged and loved in this season because of that shift. Anyway, the last one is politics. To be quite honest, this is like a scary one. It really is, because like you can never do anything right in this, situation. But not situation, topic. I think for us personally, we've both never been like super political people. We're not, and we definitely, like, I would say 2 years ago was where we probably had the most conversation. I'm sure America as a whole, can probably say the same thing. Like they've never had more conversations, more hard conversations, more in-depth, disagreements and whatever. It was a time of a lot of like contention, and I think politics were just like bam, like that was truly the first time that I really really had to think about like my stance, or I'm sure for you too. It was just like the first time we had ever even really had like these discussions surrounding politics. I think we do come from the same, like we have the same mindset, I think, because of our beliefs and because of like the things that we care about and the things that we think are wrong, or the things that we whatever. Like we're also very like, I don't know, we're also not super like opinionated aggressive people. Like if someone thinks differently than me, we're okay with that, and we're like open to conversations, and even if it's terrible, like hopefully we can shift their mindset or perspective or something. So I think just when it comes to this, like it's almost the same thing as like spiritual differences, like maybe a little harder because people can be so passionate about it. But I do know people who have different political beliefs and live very peacefully with each other. I think it just comes down to respect. It's just like another human being who believes that the things that they do, which can be hard because some things are, if someone disagrees with who you're married to, disagrees with like something that you firmly stand on, and they're standing completely firmly on an opposite opinion, that can be really hard. But I think it's the same approach as like having little conversations, offering up like a different perspective, rather than like, nope, these are touchy subjects that we can't even talk about safely. Even making sure your relationship is in a good place, or your marriage or your relationship is in like a healthy season, in talking about those things, like before you touch on those things. I know my sister the other day was like, oh yeah, her and her husband were like, what should we talk about? Because we've been doing really well. Like we're in a good season right now. So like what hot topics can we talk about while we're in this good place? I think makes it a little bit easier too, where you're both able to like gear up and prepare yourself for maybe the disappointment of a conversation or something. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, when I think of politics, and I actually we were watching some of the football games this past weekend, and someone made a comment of, you know, referees.
Mm.
Like there was a controversial call, and they basically made the comment that, you know, whatever the referee decides to make the final call, 50% of the people are going to be happy for it, and the other 50% are going to be opposed to the comment. And I think politics is somewhat the same way, in the sense that you're never going to, you know, you're never going to appease everyone or please everyone with every decision. And, you know, even if it's Republican or Democrat, like there's things that might, you know, you might have a topic that you really are passionate about and agree about, but then, you know, on the same side of the coin, there's another topic that it's like, well, I'm not so passionate about that, or I disagree with this. So then what do you choose? How do you vote? And again, politics isn't a huge thing for us in terms of we disagree or in that sense, but I know it is big for a lot of people, and that's kind of why we're touching on it. So I think, you know, for me, politics comes down to, and it's not even one that's, you know, it could cause disruption in the home if there are big disagreements on that. And again, we're all about healthy relationships, and so I think, again, having those conversations to understand why.
Yeah.
Like why do you think this? Why do you believe this? Why did you vote this? Like really just for the sake of having unity in the home, being able to understand each other and work well together. And again, I don't know that politics is going to be the breaking point in a relationship, but
You
know that
never know.
yeah, I'm sure it absolutely could be for
Yeah.
people, but I guess that's my 2 cents on it. So
Okay, last thing. I think just minimizing it, like, and not seeing it as such a thing. Like, not every hill needs to be died on. Does that work? Like, just minimizing it and your differences in that topic, like, can be really helpful. Like, I know for some people it is like their whole life, and that can be difficult, or it's like they're so opinionated and you're not able to have a conversation, or they're going to make their opinions known. It's like, could we just have a normal conversation? Can I just say something without, you know, it needing to be the discussion for the next hour and a half? And I'm absolutely in very close relationship with, like, I have 2 parents and 6 siblings. Like, I'm pretty sure all of us have such different political opinions on certain things, some similar, some different, spiritually, some similar, some different, like, but we're still able to have such healthy, wonderful, like, those are my best friends, including my parents. So, like, we're still able to have very healthy relationship despite those beliefs. And, like, you know, there's a difference between, like, a super toxic belief, like racism, for example. Like, if someone's openly racist, like, obviously I'm not going to be in a relationship with that person. But that doesn't mean I have to hate the person either. And so I think kind of like minimizing the issue. I know, especially again 2 years ago, that it was like everything, but like with my family, I'm very aware of like the things that I might disagree with in someone else's political view, but like we're not sitting there talking about it all the time because it's not as big of a thing. It doesn't have to be your relationship. It doesn't have to be everything. So just in your in your marriage as well. Like if it is something that just causes a lot of contention, like maybe it is something that you can kind of like back off on or not need to discuss so often, and like see what your relationship looks like when it's not like on this pedestal, when it's not something you guys are disagreeing about all the time or something like that. But
And I think too, again, the point of this conversation isn't that you're supposed to change who you are to
yeah,
become the other person. Like
but to live in, yeah.
that's where the beauty is you are your own person and you have your own beliefs. And when you can stand firm in those and then also, take and learn from your partner or your spouse, like what they believe, why they believe it, and then be able to pick and choose, okay, like I think that you're right in this, and so I understand that, even for the sake of understanding each other, but then also being able to adapt,
Yeah.
not to become like the other person, but to be more of a balanced person and improving yourself.
Yeah.
Across the board. Like if you work on your personal, if you what do you call it? Like if you are devoted to developing yourself, like your relationship will benefit from that. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of just I guess the purpose behind it. Embracing differences, because there's power when you can essentially come together and learn from each other and then use that to work together.
Yeah.
And so
yes.
Yep.
It's a good conversation with you, babe.
Yeah, likewise. So again, I am Seth.
And I'm Jackie.
And this is Never TMI, and we are signing off.
Peace out.